Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
McCormick.
Present.
Slide.
Present.
Bishop.
Here.
Gray. Here. Casey.
Present.
Moore. Here. Santana.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. For committee members' edification, we are going to hold 892-2023, which is around shared mobility devices. The basic around why we're holding it is it authorizes, which I read through this morning, the shared mobility fund to be used to pay consultants. The shared mobility fund was established in the original ordinance for multimodal infrastructure. So I just have a policy disagreement that that should be used to pay consultants versus neighborhood traffic calming. So that's why we are holding it. Any questions on that before we move forward? But we will meet with administration again to iron that out. Okay. All right, port control, come on up. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. Director, good morning.
Good morning.
Is this your first time hanging out with us?
It is.
All right.
Good morning.
Well, we're a friendly, lively committee, so I hope. We got a good group here. Director, why don't you give us a couple minutes and tell us about yourself for the committee, who you are, how much you love Cleveland, where you came from, all the things.
Fantastic. Well, first of all, good morning, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair.
pull this real.
Oh, sorry. Closer.
Yep.
Understood. Good morning, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, Council Committee members. Pleasure to be here. Bryant Francis, the Director of Port Control, for almost 4 months now. So I'm still pretty new to this role, new to Cleveland, new to Ohio, but very excited to be here and encouraged by what I'm seeing in terms of the business with the airport specifically, and especially at Hopkins. So a little bit about me. I'm originally from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, so I'm sort of next door neighbor to Ohio, but have never previously lived in Ohio. It is a pleasure for me to be in this role, serving the city of Cleveland, working to provide a better economic contribution to the local community. That really, at the core, is what airports are here to do. And so I'm certainly looking forward to the future and all the things that we have planned. I come to you most directly by way of Oakland, California, where I spent 7 years as Director of Aviation at the Port of Oakland. So I oversaw the operations of Oakland International Airport. My entire career, 27 years now, has been spent within aviation. So that's basically what I know. I've worked at airports all over the country, working my way up through the organizational ranks to eventually become director in 2012 in Shreveport, Louisiana for the Shreveport Airport Authority. And then I moved on to Long Beach, California, where I was airport director there for a brief period before I moved on to Oakland. So again, here for almost 4 months, and again, happy to be here, to be part of the city structure. Very excited about the momentum that's happening here, and wanting to have me, through my team and all of our contributions, make more of a move forward in growing our airport system.
Wonderful. Thank you, Director. I think I speak for the committee in welcoming you. We're excited to work with you and
Thank you.
Really dig into some of the important issues at the airport and that this committee has talked about for quite some time. So welcome. So any opening comments or questions for the Director before I dive into our legislation?
You know, can I ask him one?
Councilman, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, to the Director, being fresh and new to the city, only being here 4 months, sometimes we get stagnant because we see it every day and everything. Do you see any challenges that Hopkins has being fresh eyes at the airport? Or we can sit here and talk about how good it is, you know, all day long because it's a great airport. But any challenges that you see just being new eyes at the airport?
So through the chair to the council person, yes, there are challenges that we face, certainly. Much of that has to do with our infrastructure, which is aging and in need of attention. And in many instances, what we're going to be looking to do over the next several years, about the next decade actually, is to reinvent what you all know as Cleveland Hopkins International Airport today. So our facilities are in great need of attention. The level of services, the amenities, the technological advances, all those things are somewhat limited in terms of what we can offer today with our existing operation versus what I believe we will be able to provide through newer, more modern facilities. So that's something that I'm looking forward to. I know that that's an effort that began several years ago that continues today. And I'm encouraged by the fact that our airline partners understand that that is a need for this community to have better facilities for an improved user experience. So that really is where a lot of, I think, our challenges are going to be, is in the infrastructure, especially as travel increases. We're almost back to 2019 levels. We are hoping we're going to be flirting with 10 million passengers this year. I don't know if we're going to hit it, but we will be very close. 2019 in comparison was 10,040,000 total passengers. So things are going very well. There are many days this year where we have surpassed 2019 levels on a per day basis, but year to date through August, we're about 3% off that mark. So the things that are happening right now are certainly going to continue to move us in the right direction in terms of seat capacity and flight availability. So demand is really what it's going to come down to, how many people are continuing to fly. And that, of course, is going to be driven by the economy. But right now, things continue to look quite good, and I do believe that we'll get close to 10 million. But the closer we get to that level and surpass that level, the more challenged we will be with our infrastructure.
Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other committee members? Alrighty. All right, Director, let's kick off with 875-2023 by Council Members McCormick and Griffin by departmental request. This is an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Port Control to enter into an amendment to the lease by way of concession number 67743 with BAA USA Inc., doing business as Fraport Cleveland Inc., for the lease, management, design, and construction of retail, merchandise, food, beverage, and service concessions for the Department of Port Control facilities to extend the termination date of the agreement for a period of 1 year. 875, Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will ask Christine Gilmartin to present this item.
Great.
Good morning.
Morning.
So we're going to seek a new, our agreement with Fraport, who is our current concessionaire at the airport, who oversees the concessions. We were going to seek a new RFP this year. However, we are having ongoing discussions with the airlines regarding the master lease and which route we're going to take for the implementation of the master plan. So the decision was made to seek an extension where we wanted to kind of settle what was going on as far as going forward with the airlines. And this was not the ideal time to disrupt our concessions program. So we are seeking a 1-year extension till we get through those discussions with the airlines and see which direction we'll be taking.
Okay. So then this would be a 1-year status quo extension with an RFP or with a RFP or RFQ going out the following year. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chairman. At this time, that's the thought. We're waiting to see how the reason for this is that with the master plan, there'll become disruption to the concession program. So concessionaires would be moved, airlines would be moved. So we had structured our RFP around that we thought we'd roll forward with. However, when we had ongoing discussions with the airlines, we weren't certain which direction we were going to take. So we didn't want to head down the path of a new concessionaire with all those items in mind. We wanted to mirror with the master plan.
So this is a 1-year extension, and then the ordinance that we passed previously. So this ordinance allows for a status quo 1-year extension, whereas anything beyond that point, the new guidelines established in the ordinance we passed a couple months ago would kick in. Is that correct?
We had sought permission to go out with an RFP.
Out for bid.
So this would supersede that because we then made the decision to do an extension on the current. That would have brought in, had we gone out to the street with that, it would have brought in potentially multiple quotes and bids for a new concessionaire or a new lease with Fraport, who, if they bid on it again.
Right.
But this would supersede that because we would just extend what we currently have.
Okay, so this is a 1-year extension with the idea that there would be a RFP done after this 1-year extension. I know I'm not asking you to commit to that right now, but that is the general
That's
idea.
correct. That's correct.
Okay. What questions or comments from the committee? Councilmember Moore.
Thank you. We worked pretty extensively with the passage of 334, 2023 on the language for the RFP that we'd send out. Would this one-year extension essentially override the language that we approved in 334 and require you to come back to this body for a new approval in 1 year for a new RFP through the chair?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, that's correct. We are not, that's correct. No, we'd have to come back to the body. We're not incorporating that language into this lease, into the current lease.
You're not no, I'm not saying that you have to incorporate the RFP language into the current lease, but does it essentially reset the RFP process and require you to come back and potentially renegotiate the language in the RFP approval legislation in 334 through the chair?
Through the chair to the councilperson, we will see what happens over the course of the upcoming year. If there need to be some further considerations to what was already agreed upon, we will return to this body and have those discussions prior to issuing a new RFP. So I would expect we will come back before you regardless of that when the time comes for us to move forward with the new RFP. And that will be, at that point, we will say that either we want to keep things exactly as is, as was agreed upon earlier this year, or that there are some areas that we would like to have further discussion surrounding and for consideration to incorporate into the ultimate RFP that is issued in 2024.
Got it. And, I want to be obviously respectful of your right as a new director and also the needs of the airlines to sort of like maintain stability within the airport. And obviously, like on the margins, there might need to be some changes to the RFP. But, obviously the point of contention in 334 was a commitment to a labor peace component. Will you say here today that any future RFPs that you go out to bid for will continue to include that labor peace language that we amended into 334 through the chair?
Through the chair, yes, I fully expect that we would have that language incorporated into the RFP next year.
Okay, then you
Yes.
have my support on this bill.
Thank you,
you.
Councilmember. Do I have any other questions or comments on 875, the one-year extension and concessions? Hearing none, 875, 2023 is approved. Please sign it. Director 877, 2023 by Councilmembers McCormick and Griffin by departmental request, emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Port Control to enter into a lease agreement with Swissport USA for the lease of space located in the passenger terminal building at Cleveland Hopkins International Airport to support its ground handling and other airline support service operations for multiple airlines for a period of 2 years with 3 one-year options to renew exercisable by the Director of Port Control. Director 877.
Yes, Mr. Chair, once again, I would ask Christine Gilmartin to present this item this morning.
Hi, good morning. This piece is for Swissport. They are one of our ground handlers. This is basically their office space that they use. They also have another lease, which is their maintenance space. So they basically are hired by various airlines. We have multiple ground handlers at airport. They provide maintenance services, anything below the wing. So Swissport's seeking a lease, and it's for a small area within the terminal.
Thank you. And Director, by you bringing this forward today, my assumption is that you are happy with their services and they're a good tenant within the airport. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, yes, we have a good working relationship with Swissport at this time and are in regular contact with the services that they provide to the air carriers. So our understanding is that they are in good standing and that there are good relationships in place.
Do I have questions on Swissport, ground handling, and other airline support service operations office lease at Hopkins? Hearing none, ordinance number 877, 2023 is approved. Please sign. Director, ordinance 884, 2023 by Councilmembers McCormick and Griffin by departmental request, emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Port Control to employ one or more professional consultants to provide on-call planning services for a period of 1 year with 3 one-year options to renew exercisable by the Director. Director 884.
Mr. Chair, yes, I asked Dennis Kramer to present this item to the committee this morning. Thank you, Mr. Kramer.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, so our airport development section, we regularly have an on-call planning or multiple on-call planning consultants under contract for us to support the operation. And our current contracts expire, I think they just expired actually in August. So we are going out for we're seeking approval to go out for a new on-call planning contract to support these services. This includes various things, airspace studies, cost estimating, just different things to plan various projects and infrastructure things that we want to do at the airport. The anticipated cost will be $500,000 per year, and we're seeking for a term of 1 year with 3 one-year options. And for this, we're seek approval.
Thank you. Just question for Ms. Gilmartin, and this is just more a procedure. On the certificate of funds, it notes it's the sum of $500,000 required for the contract. Is it typical when it comes to these renewals, if it's $500,000, but we're really giving the authorization over 4 years because of the renewals, it's $2 million? It's a bit confusing when we read the certificate of funds. Should we endeavor to correct that for contracts, we either put $500,000 annually or $2 million over the term of the legislation, because we get there, it just doesn't match up intuitively.
It is an up to per year, so it could be theoretically over the course of 4 years to, if that's how it's worded on there, $2 million. Not all of our contracts go to the maximum amount. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, I guess it's
Chairman.
just, this might be a question for the Department of Finance, but I'm thinking that if, the way that I would read this is that annually are we encumbering up to $500,000 out of each annual budget? Or would it be preferable to encumber $2 million and over the course of years you could draw back from what are essentially encumbered funds in 2023?
Through the chair to the councilman, no. When I came to Port Control, they were funding contracts in a lump sum fashion.
Okay.
Over the term of 4 years. From a budget perspective, that is a very hard way to budget for a couple reasons. You need this enormous lump sum at the beginning, and what I found is most people don't spend that way. They would spend within the first year the sum of the 4-year contract. So we, through council, made the decision it was better for Port Control at least to budget on an annualized basis. That's how we collect our funds from the airlines. That way, if you put in for the up to, and the next year, say you spent 200 or 500, we only then fund you the difference between your up to. I won't overfund the contract because clearly we didn't need it, and that's how we're going to fund it.
Okay.
We're funding it annually.
I appreciate. Thank you for your response, and to my colleagues for sitting through my lesson. Are there any questions from the rest of the body? I saw Councilman Casey.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Chair, to the director, or are you commissioner now? Assistant director?
I don't know.
Dennis.
Dennis.
Can you explain on-call planning services again to us and what exactly they are?
Through the chair to the councilperson. So a lot of this contract supports, one thing in particular is airspace studies that we'll be doing. And so any kind of construction or activity that takes place around the airport, we have to submit what's called a 7460 to the FAA. And so this contract would support that effort. That's just one thing that they do. Other things, we have them just analyze feasibility studies, appraisals, really anything that would involve any kind of infrastructure that we're going to do with our facilities. We could utilize their services to support. Our planning section at Port Control is one person right now. We only have one person. We have, I think, 1 or 2 vacancies, but we only have one person that operates in our planning section right now. So having this contract helps support that person and all these different kind of planning activities that need to be done.
All right, and Mr. Chairman, to Dennis, you indicated in the opening about this that you have multiple on-call service contracts. How many do we have?
Well, we through the chair to the councilperson, we had 2, and they both just expired in August. And so
Okay.
currently we have none under contract.
All right, and then what throws up a red flag, Mr. Chairman, to Dennis, the director, or whomever, don't we have a master plan? And isn't that included in the master plan that's being paid for? Are these additional services that we're allocating? $500,000 a year is a lot, right? And if we already have a master plan, what's the need for the additional on-call services to tell us what we need if we already have the master plan?
Sure. Through the chairman of the councilperson, yes, we do have a master plan. It is the high-level, overarching, long-term plan. However, we have a lot of ongoing, day-to-day, short-term needs that we need to do. Right. We're doing a lot of little, smaller infrastructure projects right now. We have tenants that do smaller infrastructure projects, and we need the capacity to look at all these things, make sure we're not affecting our long-term master plan projects, and then also just support these more, this is shorter term, more day-to-day operations that support what we have going on and not necessarily those longer term master plan type projects.
And Mr. Chairman, to Dennis then, and we have nobody in-house that can do that? I mean, this is $500,000 for somebody to tell us what we need to do at the airport just seems a little excessive, especially when there's the master plan, and it just seems to me like it's a little excessive, knowing that this isn't the only one, right?
Through to the chair, to the councilperson. Again, we have one of these people on staff. If you look at other airports across the country, they have much larger planning staffs to support the airport as a whole, and they also have master plans and everything going on. And so, again, this is more about the kind of day-to-day type things we do as opposed to the master plan type projects. And our one-person planning department right now, this contract supports them in those day-to-day things. So yeah, we do have somebody on staff, but there's a lot more need than just than one person can handle, and that's what this contract supports.
All right, and Mr. Chairman, just maybe, I'm supportive of it, but look, going forward, $500,000 could hire, a couple of bodies at least to do this type of work, as opposed to outsourcing something that we could be doing, in my eyes. And again, I'm no aviation specialist. I'm just here to oversee the dollars that we spend, right? That $500,000 could go toward employing people as opposed to using consultants. Not that we're not employing people through consultants, but you know the gist that I'm getting at. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Do I have additional questions on 884-2023? Hearing none, 884-2023 is approved. Please sign it. Director 885-2023 by Council Members McCormick and Griffin by departmental request as amended, authorizing the Director of Port Control to employ one or more professional consultants to provide real estate services for a period of 1 year with 3 one-year options to renew exercisable by the Director. Director.
Yes, Mr. Chair, once again, I will ask Dennis Kramer to present this item to the committee this morning.
Mr. Kramer?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is another on-call contract that we're seeking to go out for bid. This particular contract is not one that we have had in the past, as opposed to the on-call planning that we have had in the past. And so we're seeking to go out for a new contract for these services. This contract will support all of the different type of real estate endeavors that we have. So there's a lot of open space real estate, not a lot I'll say, but there are a handful of properties that we oversee that are airport property that we're looking to develop potentially over the next several years, and this contract will support that. Also, during the master plan, part of what you do during a master plan is something called an Exhibit A property map. And in our Exhibit A property map, we identified, I'll say, 15 to 20 various properties that I'll say have some type of minor clerical issue that needs to be addressed. Maybe an easement didn't get recorded with the county, or some other clerical issue that just needs to be cleaned up. And so part of the effort of this consultant will also be to clean up those items that were identified in master plan as property issues. And then also, what we want to do with this contract, there'll probably be surveying involved and appraisals and different things for the parcels of the airport. And what we want to do is maximize our tax exemptions. And so our actual airfield itself is typically tax exempt, and right now our parcels are kind of messy, and there's a whole lot of big parcels and small parcels all over the place, and so we want to do our due diligence, do the surveying, and make sure that our parcels are in line with our master plan, different things we want to do, different development we want to do, revise our parcels if we need to, and then maximize any tax exemptions that we can get as well under this contract. And so this consultant will provide those services.
Thank you, Director. Okay. So I've got a piece in front of me of consultants for real estate purposes for the master plan and the airport. The value of the contract is $500,000. It is a one-year contract with 3 one-year options to renew. What questions do I have on a contract for real estate services at the airport? Councilmember Moore.
Why can't Suzanne DeGennaro do this through the chair?
Director, why can't in-house folks at the City of Cleveland do this work?
Through the chair to the council person, this work will involve a significant amount of surveying. And so my assumption would be that our internal real estate services, in addition to all the other responsibilities and duties that they have, would not have the capacity necessarily to support this effort. But we could certainly ask, but there will be a significant amount of survey, in-field work that I would assume that section does not have the capacity to support.
Got it. And the money that you're spending to do this, that's coming out, because the airport's an enterprise fund, it's coming out of your airline fees. So it's essentially your budget you're spending on the real estate consultant through the chair?
Correct.
Through the chair to the council person, yes, that's correct.
Okie dokie. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. All right, other questions on 885? Hearing none. To our Assistant Law Director, do I need to read this amendment?
Yes, please.
All right, Councilman Slife, would you move that amendment, sir? You would love to.
I move that in Section 3, Line 2, strike RQS 3001, RL 2023-75, and insert RQS 3001, RLA 2023-89.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I've got a motion and a second. Do I have any discussion on the technical amendment? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll on the amendment?
McCormick?
Yes.
Sims-Wright?
Yes.
Bishop?
Yes.
Ray? Casey?
Yes.
Moore? Yes. Santana?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The amendment stands. And with that, 885-2023 is amended, is approved. Please sign. Okay, Director, 886-2023 by Councilmembers McCormick and Griffin by departmental request. Emergency ordinance authorizing the purchase by one or more requirement contracts of floor and wall coverings and labor and materials needed to repair or replace floor and wall coverings for the Department of Port Control for a period of 2 years, with 2 one-year options to renew exercisable by the Director of Port Control. Director, tell us about floor and wall coverings.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, committee members, this is an effort for us to ensure that we have the proper materials on hand to repair our facilities within the Department of Port Control that are wall and floor related. It will ensure that we're able to repair the areas that are in need in a timely fashion and to have minimal disruption to the day-to-day operations of our facilities. We ask for your approval.
Thank you. And what is a wall covering? Is that like a painting? Or what is a wall
It could be
covering?
paint, it could be paneling, it
Okay.
could be wallpaper, any type of
Drywall. It
of
could be anything.
drywall. Yeah.
Very
so-
basic.
Correct.
Materials for
Correct.
repair at the airport.
Correct. Throughout our facilities.
Throughout
with
your
the Port Control.
facilities.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Floor and wall coverings. Do I have questions on floor and wall coverings? Hearing none. 886-2023 is approved. Please sign. All right. I think that's all I got for you, Director. Is that correct?
That
Again,
is correct, Mr. Chair.
we want to thank you, welcome
Thank you.
We really look forward to working with you and have you at these hearings, not only for floor and wall coverings, but the bigger picture issues as well. So welcome.
Certainly, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Committee members.
An
See you
update to
next
the
week.
Thank you so much. An update to the committee. We are going to hear 892-2023. Councilman Slife, our vice chair, duly worked with the administration to answer some kind of critical questions, which we're going to hear from them today. So we are going to hear this, and I'm going to invite Director DeRosa and Kelly Mersman, who has come in on her time off. Right? I want to be clear, this committee did not ask her to come in. We respect people's time off. So, but I do want to make that clear, that this committee respects maternity leave and did not, so, did not subpoena her to be here today, so, all right. Okay. And that's it. She's here at her own choice. I want to respect labor. So, okay. Ordinance 892-2023 by council members McCormick, Bishop, and Griffin by departmental request. Emergency ordinance to amend sections 517.02, 517.08 of the codified ordinances of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, as amended by ordinance number 396-2020, passed June 3rd, 2020, and ordinance number 464-2019, passed June 3rd, 2019, related to shared mobility device and bicycle vendor permit applications. Director.
Mr. Chairman, as you mentioned, Kelly Mersman is here with us today, and she's going to lead the discussion. We also want to introduce a new member of our city planning staff. So I'm going to hand it over to Kelly for that introduction.
Great.
Thank you, Director. To the committee through the chair, we're joined today by Sarah Davis. She started on Monday with the city, is a new Cleveland resident from Boston, and will be serving in city planning as our active transportation planner. So as she steps into this role, this is part of our growing focus on mobility, increasing capacity so that we can all see the changes that we'd like to see out on our roadways for all road users. Sarah will be taking over the program manager role of our shared mobility program in partnership with the Department of Capital Projects as she gets her feet under her here at the city. So we're really glad to have her here on her first week, and I just wanted to introduce you all to Sarah so that you are aware and have a chance to know her.
Thank you. Sarah, would you like to say anything? Pull the mic right up to you.
Just great to meet you all. Looking forward to getting to know you all better.
Wonderful. Well, Sarah, really appreciate you having you here, and I'll tell you that as we've worked with Callie and Director DeRosa too, this is a hot topic in our community. We get frequent complaints and concerns around speeding and safety for pedestrians and all that. So I know it's a priority of many members of council to ensure that our roads are safe for all users. So really looking forward to your expertise. So thank you so much. Okay. Let's continue with 892.
So the changes proposed in this ordinance, this is an update to our shared mobility permitting code. This permits shared scooters and bikes, as many of you have seen out on the street. We originally adopted this in 2019, and the program has continued and matured since then with a slight pause for COVID during 2020. So there are 3 changes proposed in this legislation. They are relatively straightforward. The first one changes the permit length from the 1-year current cycle to a 3-year period. What we've seen since we adopted this in 2019 is that renewing permits every year was both administratively burdensome for us and also caused difficulty for the operators, not really having surety that they would be able to continue to operate in Cleveland beyond a period of 1 year. So what we saw is that had impacts in terms of the devices that they chose to deploy here, the technology, et cetera. And so the better that we can form partnerships with operators where they have time to invest to roll out their newest technology, the better the program will be for us. So that is the background behind that change. We have a competitive permit structure, so that part is not changing. We'll still open up a permit application. Interested operators will apply to us. We'll score and evaluate those and issue permits to the fittest among them for periods of 3 years with the city. The second change strikes the request to applicants, permit applicants, shared mobility operators, to tell us what their service area will be. What we have right now is different service areas with different companies because we allow them to set that on their own. We would like to make citywide service a key part of the program. And the third change is around authority to spend funds in the Shared Mobility Fund. As you may remember, we receive 15 cents per trip that's taken in the city, that's deposited into a Shared Mobility Fund for the specific investment back into the program, including in infrastructure, parking racks, signage, et cetera. So there are some additional authorities for the Director of Capital Projects to allow us to spend that more easily to support the program.
Thank you so much. Director, anything to add?
No.
Okay, thank you. So just before I open it up to the committee, a couple of things. Can you expand more, as we discussed in the hallway, on the Shared Mobility Fund? You know, as we wrote this legislation in 2019, was it 19? Okay. Really, the point of that fund is to support the program, to support multimodal infrastructure. So can you expand more on the intent of, you know, what this money is going to be used for? How does it support everyday Clevelanders who want to use, whether it's bikes or scooters or other forms of multimodal transportation?
Sure. So there are a couple of key expenses that we have targeted for this Shared Mobility Fund. Some of them are more programmatic in their nature, and some are hard infrastructure. In the programmatic category, there is a data management software that we want to subscribe to in partnership with the county. Each of these scooters or bikes has a GPS unit on it. It's constantly pinging, creating data about where rides start, where they end, the route that people take to get there. None of it is specific and individual, so it's not like we're tracking individual people, but on aggregate, when we have access to that data, we can see heat maps of where utilization is, which roads riders take the most, so that we can target them for things like bike and scooter lanes. We can also use that system to evaluate compliance. So if we have operators that aren't abiding by our no-ride zones, we don't have to use anecdotal evidence to enforce that. It really lets us maintain an even playing field in terms of adherence to our rules and regulations.
Okay, so chunk one of this consultant or of the funding would be working with the county to directly improve and oversee the program. Is that correct?
That's
Okay.
right.
All right.
An example of the infrastructure side of things is that right now we are working with the county and Bike Cleveland to plan and invest in parking hubs. So one of the main complaints that we hear about scooters and e-bikes, the shared mobility program, is that there's clutter, right? People maybe aren't parking them the way that they should. So we are investing in racks and signage to create these physical parking hubs that you as a user can see as you're out there, you know where to park. There's some instructions on how to do that and how to ride safely. We've identified more locations across the city than our existing grant can pay for. And so the Shared Mobility Fund is a pool of resources that we, the city, can use to invest in additional racks, signage, enhancing bike lanes on roads that we know people are riding bikes and scooters on.
Thank you. Okay, so then that other chunk directly into the infrastructure around the program. Okay. Does this legislation, are we still able to, one of the initial components of the original legislation was if we had a bad actor, we could pull their permit. Moving from 6 months or 1 year to 3 years, do we still have that statutory authority to say company X is just messing everything up, right? They're not responsive to us, or we still have that ability to pull their permit, is that correct?
We do. None of that part of the code has changed.
Got it. I just want to make sure that's clear, because going from a longer contract, ensuring that a provider doesn't say, well, great, I'm here for 3 years now, I can do whatever I want. So we still have that legislative authority, or the authority to do that.
Yep.
The other thing I want to just note too, the no-ride zones, I know this is a point of contention, but I want to make sure that we revisit this. And let me just give you an example. Is there a way that, and I'll think in the downtown neighborhood, around some of our major institutions that draw in a lot of people, one of the things that's worked really well, I think, for the Guardians games, it seems like that park across the street, where the ODOT property is kind of like a parking zone for shared mobility. That's great. Right, it's right across the street. But are we thinking critically, like for a Browns game, for example, because we know how traffic can get, promoting as many people to get there outside of a vehicle as possible? Do we have those types of zones for Browns games or are we thinking critically about, for large events, how do we promote as many people to come to reduce traffic?
We have had those conversations with the managers of the sports facilities in partnership with the Bureau of Traffic and Police, as well as the shared mobility operators. There is room for us to improve, and so some of the things that we've talked about specifically for the Browns games, as people may know, there's no vehicular traffic north of Lakeside 2 hours before to 2 hours after the game to help that flow, pedestrian flow from the Muni lot, et cetera.
Right.
And so some options that we have talked about, especially looking at traffic management around sporting facilities and other places, is are we able to kind of carve out a scooter and bike lane that helps get people to the stadium, where around the stadium is the best place for those parking hubs
Yep.
so that they're clustered, not distributed
Right.
all over. So it is a balance between the pedestrian flow, the safety of people on foot, as well as people operating scooters and bikes. So I would say it's not a one-size-fits-all thing, but they are conversations that we're very interested in continuing to advance to make a solution work better for
Yeah.
people getting out.
Yeah, and again, I'll pull on the Guardians games. It seems like that's a really good setup. You can just, there's a space that's open that you can, it's not in the way, clusters them all together. So I'd really encourage us to look at for our other large pulls into downtown, be it Browns games, be it events at the Q, the Rocket Mortgage, I think is what it is now, whatever it is, the basketball place, that we're looking at that, because again, providing people the most incentive possible to access those facilities without a vehicle, right? I mean, I'm not saying everyone will, but just make it as seamless as possible. So I don't know if, you know, our property at our city property along the lake could be, you know, an option for that, or what that looks like, but I think that would be really helpful. So I'm glad. So what are the next steps on kind of negotiating that with the teams? How do we view that?
So the way that our special event guidelines are right now, they're in our administrative rules and regulations for the program. Part of this update to a 3-year permit term, it's kind of like phase 2 of our overall approach to shared mobility. So if council approves this, we are poised to release a new permit application this fall that will go into effect next spring. We have several updates to our rules and regulations that we'd like to put in place as part of that updated permit cycle, including a more nuanced approach to special events than the blanket no ride zones that we have in place right now.
That's great.
So
because
the timing is great, with Sarah here especially,
Great.
the added capacity to really be strategic about how we're tailoring the nuances of the program to achieve the outcomes that we want, like more people biking, riding scooters rather
Right.
than having to drive.
That's great. Yeah, and I really appreciate the nuance there, because some of these kind of blanket no ride zones, and I know that Councilman Slife and I we use these devices and others throughout the city, so just making them as convenient as humanly possible to promote people to not use vehicles, I think will be really helpful. The last thing I have, and my colleague may talk about this, but can you speak to the zones or the areas of the city that these are able to operate in? I know that, you know, Councilman Slife has articulated, you know, concern in his West Park neighborhood about, you know, why aren't there more opportunities? I won't speak for him, but can you speak to how this change may open these up for more residents?
Yes, certainly. So there are two pieces of this. One is specifically in the legislation, and the second part goes to the more nuanced approach to the rules and regulations update. The way that the ordinance reads as passed in 2019 allows operators to tell us where they will operate. And so we have an operator that has a service boundary drawn at I-90, for example. So locations to the south of that are not included. We know that there is a cluster of use of this in our densest area, so downtown, surrounding neighborhoods, a little bit in University Circle, but are very interested and have heard a lot of interest in expanding access citywide across the neighborhoods. And so the amendment we're requesting in the legislation allows us to require that operators set citywide service boundaries rather than letting them tell us where they would like to operate. So that's the piece that's in legislation. In terms of our rules and regulations, currently we have a map of what we call rebalancing locations. So these are specific rectangles on the sidewalk where the operators are allowed to set out the scooters and bikes for use. When we launched this program in 2019, you know, it was a new technology. There was some uncertainty around safety, whether it would be used, how the uptake would be if this was sort of a flash in the pan type of thing or a lasting program. And so our rebalancing locations are in that core area, sort of our pilot zone. We, as we're updating this phase 2 piece, are looking at locations in neighborhoods across the city, wanting to really ensure that at least ideally there's somewhere that people can walk to, a mobility hub that would have scooters and bikes set out. And so that is sort of the more nuanced programmatic planning that we're in the process of right now.
I appreciate that too. And one other thing too, and I just, because they reached out to me, I'm aware of it. You know, Bird is launching a program with CMHA to provide discounted rates for residents, which is great.
Yeah.
So thinking about how a resident can get to a job, to school, to whatever, or even if it's the bus stop is just a little bit too far to walk, you know. So are we really kind of communicating that we want to ensure that this access is equitable to all of our residents? Is that a fundamental piece of this?
Yes, so all of our operators have equitable access in terms of discounted pricing and also the ability to start a ride without a smartphone. It's a lot less convenient without the app, but it is possible. But geography and access to a device is another really big piece of equity, and so that's how that ties into the service area and rebalancing locations.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to open up to the committee on 892-2023. Council members, Life?
Thank you. And it's Son, just one of the ones that work.
You're on.
I'm appreciative that there are, as you said, Chairman, those efforts to especially focus on the CMHA population. I know, so I ride transit a lot, and I found I'll normally ride my bike to the rapid station, lock it up, get on the train. If I get downtown and I'm able to use a scooter, if I time it right, it's really only like 30, 35 minutes door to door from my house to City Hall. So I've been always interested in this as a last mile option. And just bluntly, I think when the pilot began a couple years ago, I remember one of the companies, I can't remember who, so I'm not going to pick on them because I can't, but was talking about how this is like a great equity play. But I remember the service area was split north of Shaker Boulevard, the area was in, and south of Shaker Boulevard, the area was out. So I kind of said, how can you even suggest that this is about equity when there's clearly, and you're not focused on equity by this very strategically put line. And I know even in Ward 17, it's about a half-hour walk from public housing in Riverside Park to the RTA rapid station at Puritas. So if we're able to find ways to cut that down and make people's commutes short, I think there is real value to that. I guess my main question is, as we are moving forward with those staging locations, what are our conversations? Obviously, we have a lot of power within our own right-of-way, but private property owners, whether it's a shopping plaza or RTA or like kind of what are those nodes that we don't own, and what are we doing to kind of compel or suggest that these be nodes for mobility parking?
Thank you, Councilman. Great question to the councilman through the chair. We have done surveys specifically of RTA transit stations along the Red Line to identify locations on RTA property where hubs could exist. That needs to be expanded to the blue and green lines. Private property also comes into play when in some locations, we have a right-of-way line that the sidewalk actually extends beyond. And so there's sort of this public realm space that isn't technically our right-of-way, where we would like to put racks, signage, but can't right now because that walkway within the right-of-way is too limited. So this connects back to the Shared Mobility Fund. We can spend Shared Mobility Fund dollars to put racks there where we can't spend our grant funding, so that gives us a little bit more flexibility. And then connecting to some of the transportation demand management conversations that recently came to council. City planning is also really ramping up coordination with developers on mobility options. And so this wouldn't be anything that we need to pay for, but we're being very intentional in a way that we haven't been in the past in terms of asking them to design in mobility hub, like where can these operators deploy scooters and bikes in your development location. That doesn't have to be in our right of way, doesn't have to take space from bus stops, pedestrians on the sidewalk, et cetera, but that service is available for the development.
Thank you. And I'll be interested, obviously, the existing areas are what we have piloted, and then I think it's wise to be data-driven moving forward, but I think that the next step is balancing being data-driven against kind of testing some of these new options to create the data. I don't want us to be so data-driven that we are not trying new things. My final question is, and maybe this is too broad, but is there any precedent? I know, like, one of my thoughts is like there's a scooter downtown and I'm taking the Rapid, but maybe there's not a scooter when I'm getting off the Rapid, and I know that RTA has been really reluctant to allowing scooters on their trains, even and buses, even though they allow bikes. Is there any precedent in other cities of allowing that and even time like pausing the rental in that duration of transit, so that what my worry is, we've created a way for people to get to, like, from Puritas Rapid Station to Riverside Park, but if they get there and there's no scooter, and sometimes it's even hard to see from a distance if there's going to be a scooter, then it's sort of a crapshoot, and that disincentivizes the use. So to me, a logical thing is that you can pick one up, put it on the train, not be charged while you're on the train because the GPS can tell you that, and then continue on. But I don't know if any other cities do that, or if it's a conversation we can continue with RTA.
To the councilman through the chair, the preference to address that need would be to have those hubs at transit across the board, so that you reliably know that there will be a different device available for you when you get off the train or bus, especially on buses taking scooters on. They're relatively heavy. They don't fit on the bike racks that are on the front of the buses, et cetera. So that wouldn't be the preferred method. We'd rather address it through a robust program that has good distribution.
And I guess, thank you. My request then back, as we are entering into these 3-year agreements, would be that, like, if I open up the app right now and I want to go to University Circle, I can't really see if there's what the density of scooters is because I'm too far geographically from it. So is there a way that they can change their own app interface to allow for a more wider viewpoint, so that you're able to kind of hedge for that from a distance, would be my request. So, and with that, I'll turn over back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. What other questions do I have on 892? Councilman, yeah, Santana.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, just on the points of Councilman's life. So going back to the data, right? Like, I see tons of scooter on Clark Avenue, Store Avenue. Are you saying because of the data, you'll be able to analyze where these scooters are being used, and then there's an option to actually probably put stations and hubs in those areas?
Yes, to the councilwoman through the chair, that's correct. And I think Councilman Slife kind of hit it on the head. The data that we have can help inform what we do. So if there are a lot of scooters ending rides at Clark and Fulton, we would go potentially talk to private property owners, see what space is in the right-of-way to create a investment in infrastructure and a parking hub there. Also, we know that you can't start rides on scooters or bikes that aren't available for you to start a ride on. And so I think to his point about not only putting racks or devices out where we see that they're being used, but also that's one of the nice things about the dockless nature of this, is that we can work with the operators to deploy in different areas, see what the uptake is, utilization, and then follow that with infrastructure investment.
Got it. Okay. So I do see a lot on Store Avenue, Commissioner, so maybe, or Director, so maybe that's something that we could kind of target as we're talking about capital project possibly on Store Avenue. So, and I'm also curious to know, how much do we raise? How much is in that budget a year for?
Good question.
From those
Ms.
fees?
Mersman?
To the councilwoman through the chair, we have some invoices that just went out, so when those come back, we will have approximately $150,000 in the shared mobility fund. We get 15 cents per trip, and so that amount fluctuates. We get the majority of the fees from that in the summertime when ride numbers are higher. It tapers way down in the winter, of course, due to our weather,
Okay.
but
Thank you, Callie.
And do we know, do we have any idea of, to date from 2019, how much we've raised on that? Do we have any?
I can do a quick calculation. We have had about 1.2 million rides in the duration of the program. So I can
Yeah,
multiply
we
that
can just
times
follow up with
15 cents.
staff on that request, just an understanding of what that total has been and kind of a breakdown over the years. I'd be interested to see that.
Sure.
So, that's great. All right, do I have any other questions on 892-2023? This is also going to be heard by Councilmember Bishop and Griffin at MSP and Finance, so this will be at other committees. All right, hearing no further questions, 892-2023 is approved out of Transportation. Thank you so much for coming in on your time off. Director, appreciate it, and welcome, Sarah. Got it.
Thank you
Appreciate
for
it.
having us. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. Apparently. All righty, 892-2023 is approved. Please sign. Anything else for the committee before we gavel? Director. Hearing nothing, this Transportation Mobility Committee is adjourned.